Speaking of lunatics, look, I am not qualified, and I'm not going to pretend that I am qualified to assess how the military campaign is going in Ukraine. But as someone who doesn't know any of this stuff, there's a lot of indications that it's not going the way that they want it. Like we were talking about a Ukrainian offensive. Maybe that's just a complete myth, but it's weird that they would, I don't think like a month and a half ago, anybody would say like, wait till the Ukrainian offensive with all these 150,000 troops in Russia. I don't think that you would be hearing sort of the snowflakey, the West is declaring war on us by imposing economic sanctions because we're bombing the hell out of a country. Here is Putin. Seems like this dude has not been getting out enough.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine I'm a soldier on the front lines and I'm looking for a rousing speech from the leader.
Yeah, here comes the leader. I got you.
Yep.
Didn't begin yesterday. We know this very well. In Hollywood, they avoided films even when they made films where the only winner, the country that defeated fascism, was the United States, and didn't say anything about the Red Army. But if you look at the number of military units fighting in the East, that was the Russian units. So they just canceled the contribution of the Red Army into the defeat over the Nazis. And in Japan, they don't even mention who dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or they just say it was done by some abstract allies. And the fact that it was the United States who did such an awful slaughter at the end of the war, this fact is not even mentioned. So they just cancelled cynically this truth. They cancelled JK Rowling recently, the children's author. Her books
from Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
That's my point. That's what the best part is like, you're like, okay, kind of fair, you know?
I mean, I don't really understand the point of we blame allies for dropping the bomb. I feel like we're pretty aware that it was.
Oh, I think, look, I think his point is well taken insofar as like, yes, in America, when we recount World War II, we don't give much credit, never mind to the French or the British, but certainly to the Soviet Union, not at all.
I mean, they lost 20 million people, and
fair enough,
and there, I think, is in Russia like a significant amount of understandable resentment towards the United States for us puffing our chest like we're the liberators, we saved and we jumped in at the 11th hour, and like
better invade Ukraine about it.
And people's grandparents are right, exactly.
That's the twisted part, and it's also like this is such a grave injustice. I'm going to compare it to what's happening with JK Rowling.
I know.
It's like I'm all for like revising. I understand that it's like a massive terror attack, basically, but like JK Rowling's your next.
And that's why, troops, you have to fight and kill some more Ukrainians just because they keep canceling good heroes like JK Rowling.
Go back, and so that we can get the full sort of like pivot here.
And the flummoxed translator.
Just in case you're not clear on how much of a slight this is on Russia and how much, like in Japan, they don't hold the U.S. to account. I'm going to remind you by bringing up what's happening to the author of Harry Potter and her transphobia.
The fact that it was the United States who did such an awful slaughter at the end of the war, this fact is not even mentioned. So they just cancelled cynically this truth. They cancelled JK Rowling recently, the children's author. Her books are published all over the world, even just because she didn't satisfy the demands of gender rights. They're not trying to cancel our country. I'm talking about the progressive discrimination of everything to do with Russia, this trend that's unfolding in a number of Western states with the full...
Can you pause it for a second? I just really love like this image of Putin isolated on his $100 million super yacht, not seeing anybody during COVID, just cannot stop reading Barry Weiss's Substack.
Yeah, about the JK Rowling thing.
Yeah.
It's
Just obsessed with Barry Weiss.
It's sandwiched between these two sort of like, sort of, I guess it's like significant like sources of I guess national aggrievement.
Yeah.
That, and like, I think just even having to go for the national aggrievement at this point is indicative that he's a little bit backheeled. But the idea that the thing that bridges these two things of national aggrievement is JK Rowling is just bizarre.
It's like we're really upset about the Treaty of Versailles, and also Charlie Chaplin needs to be in more movie theaters.
Yes. I mean, this is like Ginny Thomas level of like sort of just like, dude, you gotta. It's honestly, it feels like he's about to link to his Substack.
They call her a TERF.
All right, so go back a little bit so that people can just sort of appreciate again. He's going from they don't hold the U.S. to account for dropping the atomic bomb and killing so many people in such a horrible way. They don't get held to account for completely negating our role in defeating fascism in this world. And they're also got some issues with a writer about her gender. And then he goes into the next one.
I hope he mentions the Cho Chang thing.
Well, even just because she didn't satisfy the demands of gender rights, they're not trying to cancel our country. I'm talking about the progressive discrimination of everything to do with Russia, this trend that's unfolding in a number of Western states with the full neglect or sometimes encouragement of Western cultures. That they're now engaging in the cancel culture. They're even removing Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich, Rachmaninoff from posters. Russian writers and their books are cancelled. There's now the latest program to cancel world literature was conducted by the Nazis in Germany 90 years ago. We remember that footage when they were burning books. It's impossible to imagine such a thing in our country, and we're insured against this thanks to our culture. And it's inseparable for us from our motherland, from Russia, where there is no place for ethnic intolerance, where for centuries representatives from dozens of ethnic groups have been living together. And cultural diversity is the pride of our society, the strength and priority of our state.
I mean, the only thing I can think is that he wants to obscure the reasons why these things are happening around the world. Now, I personally think, whether you're removing Russian literature or even like Russian vodka, unless you can trace it back to somebody who's providing some type of material support for the country. I mean, most of the stuff is already in country, and things like we're not going to allow this Russian violinist to play with our opera. I think that's just absurd. Absolutely. But I think from his perspective, maybe he brings up the JK Rowling to make it seem like that's all this is about.
Yeah, he wants to go on Joe Rogan.
Maybe.
I mean,
maybe he literally does.
It's been horrible since this invasion started, and I haven't seen a single Tchaikovsky or Rachmaninoff poster up because we had to take them all down immediately.
Yes.
The house elves likes their slavery.
Like, yeah, that stuff is dumb. That sort of anti-Russian thing where we're not going to let a Russian blue cat, as somebody who owns a Russian blue, compete in cat festivals or whatever. That's dumb. But like also, there's a lot of anti-American sentiment during the Iraq invasion of Iraq, and I think like it shouldn't have been aimed at normal or everyday Americans, but it frankly is understandable.
Well, and it's frankly, let's be honest. If you hold the belief that Putin is an authoritarian and that is a very authoritarian state, it makes more sense, and that the United States is not. It makes more sense to hold Americans to account for the actions of their government more so than one would for Russia. I mean, that just makes common sense. But but it could be his strategy to sort of basically communicate to his, to the Russian people. Well, the reason why this is happening has nothing to do with the bombing that we're doing, has nothing to do with like, killing women and children and invading a country on the premise of like a potential threat that doesn't seem to be forming. Maybe the reason why we're getting canceled is just because they're all, the harping liberal snowflakes who
JK Rowling is
they're the authoritarians.
Well, it shows he's monitoring how the United States right is positioning themselves. I mean, like there's
probably too closely.
I mean, they're trying to take pages out of the other's book.
Yeah, worry about your troop positions more than how their rights.
But I think
that's why he's on Barry Weiss's Substack all the time.
I think the more like the domestic, moral, morale, I should say, of the people there. This could be a function of that as much as it is, people on the front. It could be just more of a function of like. The reason why we're getting sanctions and whatnot is a function of, ask Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
He'll tell you, here, play this clip of Tucker Carlson, which is literally what they're doing.
Yeah, they're doing so much. America's doing so much cancel culture to us that we have to pull off a whole bunch of stations off the airwaves and shut down publications.
But we got to do that because of all the cancel culture in America.
It'll have the same effect on the right here. They'll still trying to do the same stuff.
But of course, who knows if anybody will see that in Russia because they're probably shadow banning.
Oh, totally.
Putin right now.
Putin, go on Rumble.